Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video.
Thanks for watching. Follow a brighter destiny for more powerful stories, and don't forget to subscribe.
Asheville, North Carolina, 7:52 a.m., late November. The frost on the windows of the Amber Kettle Diner had not fully melted by the time the breakfast rush began. A smell of burnt coffee grounds mixed with cinnamon rolls rifted toward the door every time it opened. A cold wind pushed dry leaves across the parking lot outside and inside. The fluorescent lights hummed their same tired hum they had hummed every morning for 11 years. Nobody looked up when the door chimed. Diane Pruitt did. She was the floor manager, 39 years old, dressed in a gray blazer that fit too tightly across the shoulders. She had built her entire identity around the word standards. He noticed the old woman sitting alone at booth 14 before anyone else did. The woman's coat was black wool, expensive once, now worn thin at the elbows. Her white hair had not been brushed. Her hands trembled slightly against a menu she was not reading. Diane walked over with the particular posture of someone who had rehearsed being unkind and called it professionalism. "I need you to either order something or free up the booth," she said. "We have a line forming." The old woman blinked, as if surfacing from somewhere far away. "I only need a few more minutes," she said quietly. "This isn't a place to sit and warm up," Diane said. "I'm going to need you to leave." At booth 11, a man named Marcus Doyle stopped cutting his daughter's pancake in half. He was 41, wearing a faded gray hoodie with a small oil stain near the cuff and boots that had been resoled twice. He had raised his daughter Lily alone for the last 3 years, ever since his wife Karen died of an aneurysm on a Tuesday afternoon while folding laundry. 8 months earlier, he had lost his job of 14 years as a senior refrigeration technician for Whitfield Family Foods. Since then, he had been surviving on delivery shifties and appliance repair calls, and that morning he had exactly $41.16 in his wallet after paying for gas. A plate between him and Lily, 2 eggs, a small stack of pancakes, 3 strips of bacon was already more than they usually spent. Marcus had told Lily he wasn't hungry, so she would eat without all guilt. Lily, 8 years old, wore a yellow knitted scarf, wrapped twice around her neck, a gift from her late mother. She had been watching the old woman since the moment she walked in. "Dad," Lily whispered, shaking. Across the diner, the old woman rose slowly, buttoning her coat with unsteady fingers. She said nothing else to Diane. She simply turned toward the door, moving like someone who had practiced leaving rooms quietly her entire life. Marcus watched her take one step, then another. He knew what it felt like to leave somewhere while pretending the humiliation didn't sting. "Ma'am," he called out. She stopped. Marcus pulled an empty chair toward his table. "You're welcome to sit with us." Anne's jaw tightened. "Mr. Doyle, she hasn't ordered anything." "She's sitting at a table that's already been paid for," Marcus said. The old woman looked between Marcus and Lily. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know," Marcus answered. That answer made her hesitate longer than any argument would have. Marcus waved down a passing server. "Could we get one more plate, please?" "Anything fancy." Diane stepped closer, arms folded. "You cannot turn a single order into free service for strangers." "We're not asking for free service," Marcus said. "We're asking for a bowl." He divided what remained of the food, a portion for Lily, a smaller one for himself, and the rest onto the extra plate. Lily slid one pancake from her own stack onto the woman's plate without being asked. Then she stood, unwound the yellow scarf from her neck, and walked around the table. "I can borrow this," she said, "until your ride's here." The old woman stared at the scarf as if she had forgotten objects could still be offered without a price attached. "A ride?" she asked. Lily nodded. "My dad says nobody should have to wait outside when it's this cold." Marcus had never said those exact words, but he didn't correct her. The woman allowed Doyle drape the scarf over her shoulders. It was still warm. "Thank you," she whispered. Lily climbed back into the booth. "I'm Lily." The woman touched the edge of the scarf. Eleanor. Marcus slid the plate toward her. I'm Marcus. He had no idea in that moment that the woman now wrapped in his daughter's scarf was the majority owner of the very company that had destroyed his professional name 8 months earlier. For a while, nobody spoke. The three of them ate quietly while the diner filled up around them, the sound of clattering forks and low conversation rising like a tide. Eleanor took one bite of egg, then set her fork down. Her eyes filled with water she didn't try to hide. Lily glanced at her father, unsure if she'd done something wrong. Marcus shook his head gently. Not a mistake. Just grief, arriving the way it does uninvited and exactly on time. I'm sorry, Eleanor said, pressing a napkin to her mouth. You don't have to be, Marcus said. She looked toward booth 14, the one she'd been forced to leave. My son used to sit there, she said. He loved the blueberry pancakes here, even when he was old enough to admit they weren't very good. Today would have been his birthday, she added, so quietly it almost dissolved into the noise of the room. Marcus didn't ask how her son had died. He didn't offer a sentence meant to make the grief easier for everyone except the person carrying it. He simply slid the napkin holder a few inches closer to her hand. Lily reached over and touched Eleanor's sleeve. My mom died too, she said, 3 years ago. Marcus's hand paused on the table. Lily rarely brought it up first. Sorry, Eleanor said. Dad still makes her pancakes on her birthday, Lily said. They're usually burned. Eleanor laughed, and the laugh cracked halfway into something closer to a sob, and for the first time in 10 days she felt something in her chest besides the silence of an empty house. Then an alarm sounded near the front counter. The refrigerated dessert case beside the register flashed red, a shrill electronic tone cutting through the diner's noise. Diane rushed over and slapped a button on the panel. The alarm stopped. The display still read 48 degrees. A thin line of condensation ran down the glass and pooled on the tile floor. Marcus turned in his seat, listening to the compressor's uneven hum. That case needs to be checked, he said. Diane didn't look back. It does that sometimes. The temperature's too high for that to be nothing. It was open for the morning delivery, she said. It's been running warm longer than a delivery would explain. Anne crossed the room toward him, arms folded tighter now. You're a customer here, sir. Let the staff handle equipment. Each trying to help you. He'll handle it before they get sick. Her eyes dropped to his hoodie, to the small grease stain at the cuff. And what exactly qualifies you to diagnose our equipment from a booth? Marcus met her gaze evenly. 14 years in commercial refrigeration. He understood the real question underneath her words. Now he delivered packages. Now he fixed washing machines in apartment basements. People saw the hoodie and the worn boots and assumed the job he'd lost proved he'd never deserved it in the first place. I'm telling you, he said, the dairy in that case needs to be pulled and checked with a calibrated thermometer, and everything above safe temperature needs to be held until your contractor clears it. We have procedures, Diane said, then follow them. A young server named Sarah Whitmore stepped out from behind the counter. I can check it, she offered. I said it's fine, Diane snapped. It says 48, Sarah said, nodding toward the display. Because the door was open. Marcus spoke quietly. Check the milk near the center of the case. Diane looked at the growing number of customers now watching. She said through her teeth. Prove it's fine then. Sarah sanitized a probe thermometer and pushed it into a carton of milk. The room seemed to hold its breath for the 6 seconds it took the display to settle. 47, Sarah said. The air in the diner changed. Marcus stood, but stayed several feet from the case. Move the food to the walk-in. Check the time it came out. Don't serve anything from that unit until a licensed contractor clears it. Diane opened her mouth to argue and the alarm sounded again, longer this time, more urgent. Sarah and another employee began pulling trays without waiting for permission. Marcus sat back down. He hadn't opened a panel. He hadn't touched a single wire. He had simply recognized a warning. Most people would have ignored it and asked the fireflying a health department headline. Eleanor watched him carefully through all of it. You knew what that sound meant, she said. I knew what it could mean, Marcus said. There's a difference. A warning tells you to stop and check. It doesn't give you permission to guess. Just then, the front door opened and a silver-haired man in a dark wool coat hurried inside, visibly relieved the moment his eyes found Eleanor. Mrs. Whitfield, he said, I'm sorry there was nowhere to park. I had to circle the block twice. It's all right, Frank, Eleanor said. Anne's expression froze mid-sentence. Her gaze drifted to a black and white photograph hanging near the register. A much younger Eleanor, standing beside her late husband in front of the very first Whitfield Family Foods market. Bold lettering beneath the photograph read, Eleanor and Thomas Whitfield, founders. The Amber Kettle Diner was owned by Whitfield Family Foods. Every paycheck in the building carried this woman's family name. Mrs. Whitfield, Diane said, the color draining from her face. They didn't recognize you. Eleanor looked at her for a long moment. That was exactly the problem. The diner had gone almost completely silent. I was only trying to protect the dining experience, Diane said. From what? Eleanor asked. A grieving old woman sitting alone? Diane had no answer. How many people have you turned back into the cold? Said that you decided, on sight, that they couldn't afford to matter. Diane's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Eleanor didn't demand she be fired on the spot. Instead, she turned toward the refrigerated case. Preserve this morning's camera footage, she said. The temperature logs, the alarm history, and every maintenance record for that unit. Yes, ma'am, Diane said. Call the licensed contractor today. Document exactly what they find. Yes, ma'am. Eleanor turned to Sarah. Thank you for checking. Sarah looked stunned, as if she'd just realized the floor beneath her had been made of something sturdier than she'd thought. Ink was already on his phone, typing notes. Marcus began quietly gathering the empty plates. You don't need to do that, Diane said quickly. No, Marcus said. Eleanor stood and began unwinding the yellow scarf from her shoulders. Lily reached across the table. You can keep it until you get home. Eleanor pressed it to her chest instead of returning it. Then I'll make sure it finds its way back to you. Marcus reached into his jacket and handed her a business card. Marcus Doyle Appliance Repair and Refrigeration Support, with a phone number printed beneath it. Something about the name tugged faintly at Eleanor's memory. But the last several months of grief had blurred into one long gray hallway, and she couldn't place it. Thank you, Mr. Doyle, she said. For breakfast, for noticing me. Lily smiled. We noticed you because you were right there. Yes, Eleanor said softly. I suppose I was. Frank helped her into a black sedan waiting at the curb. As the car pulled away, Marcus counted the remaining bills in his wallet. $9.40. Are we in trouble? Lily asked. No. Did we spend too much? Marcus looked at the empty plate between them. We spent exactly what we chose to spend. Lily considered this. Was she really rich? Like actually rich? Looks that way. Lily grinned. She still needed my scarf, though. Yes, Marcus said. She did. By that afternoon, an independent contractor confirmed a failing relay had kept the display case from holding safe temperature for nearly 2 hours. Because the food had been pulled quickly, the diner avoided serving spoiled dairy and prevented a loss estimated near $4,900. The contractor also discovered the same alarm had been 3 times in the previous month without a full service call. At 3:15 that afternoon, Eleanor sat in the back of her car outside the house she had barely left in 10 days. Lily's scarf was still wrapped around her shoulders. Through the window, the house looked exactly as it had that morning, curtains drawn, lights off, her son Thomas's unopened birthday cards still waiting on the hall table because she hadn't been able to bring herself to throw them away. He would have turned 49 that day. For days now, people had entered that house carrying documents. Approve this. Edit, sign that, transfer authority. And a stranger in a grease-stained hoodie had asked for nothing but an extra bowl. Eleanor called Grace Chandler, her general counsel. I need you to look into someone, she said. Who? Marcus Doyle. Am I verifying his work history? Anything connected to Whitfield? There was a pause on the line. Is he involved in the incident at the diner today? He prevented it from becoming a real one, Eleanor said. And Grace do it quietly. 2 hours later, Grace called back and her voice had changed. Marcus Doyle worked for Whitfield Family Foods for 14 years. Senior refrigeration systems technician, cold storage division. Eleanor sat up straighter. Why did he leave? He didn't leave. He was terminated 8 months ago. For what? The file lists insubordination and failure to support management direction. Any safety violations? None. Discipline history before that. One written warning, issued shortly before termination, for refusing to sign a commissioning report. Eleanor felt a memory surface, distant and half-formed. Months earlier, Thomas had mentioned a technician caught in a dispute over a new cold storage facility, a man who might have been punished for refusing to sign off something he didn't trust. Thomas had already been sick by then, and a nurse had walked in, and the conversation had simply ended there. She had never asked about it again. Who signed the termination? She asked. Grace hesitated. Bradley Whitfield. Bradley was Eleanor's nephew, and he had stepped in as acting chief executive the moment Thomas entered the hospital. Days since the funeral, he had called her nearly every day, asking when she planned to a transfer of voting theory into his name. The complete file, Eleanor said. I may need operational authorization for that. You have mine. The next morning, Bradley Whitfield walked into his office on the 31st floor of Whitfield Family Foods Charlotte headquarters. He was 46 years old, precisely dressed and known throughout the company for making people feel their employment depended on the tone of every sentence they spoke to him. His assistant told him that legal had requested archived records related to a former employee named Marcus Doyle. Bradley stopped walking. Why? She didn't say who requested it. It was Grace Chandler. He shut his office door. 8 months earlier, Marcus had delayed the opening of a regional cold storage facility by refusing to certify the final commissioning report. The project was behind schedule. Investors had been promised a launch date. Marcus had insisted the temperature data did not prove the system could hold stable conditions under a full operating load. Bradley had called it excessive caution dressed up as principle. When Marcus refused to soften his conclusion, Bradley pulled him from the project. 2 weeks later, Marcus was gone from the company entirely. Bradley had considered the matter closed. He called Eleanor. She answered on the 5th ring. Aunt Eleanor, he said, I heard you went to the diner in Fort Collins Road yesterday. You should have told security. They had Frank. It wasn't safe. You haven't been eating properly. The concern in his voice was smooth, well-rehearsed. He met Marcus Doyle, Eleanor said. Silence on the line. That explains the legal request, Bradley said finally. Tell me about him. Your former employee who couldn't respect the chain of command. He recognized a refrigeration failure from across a restaurant. That doesn't change what happened at Northline. What happened? He delayed a $9 million facility and undermined leadership in front of the contractors. The instruction did he refuse to follow? To revise a report that was needlessly alarming. Was the report wrong? It was incomplete. That's not what I asked, Bradley. He walked to the window. Aunt Eleanor, you're grieving. This man saw an opportunity in your vulnerability and attached himself to it. He didn't know my name when he offered me his food. That kind of gesture creates emotional leverage, whether he planned it or not. His daughter gave me her scarf. Children can be persuasive without meaning to be. Eleanor closed her eyes. I want the complete file. You have people for that. They're already working on it, she said, and ended the call. That evening, Marcus was on his back beneath an apartment building's utility sink, replacing a drain pump, when his phone rang. Mr. Doyle, speaking. This is Eleanor Whitfield. He sat up slowly. Did the scarf make it home okay? It did. It's the warmest thing in my house right now. A pause. The contractor confirmed your warning about the refrigerator. Glad they caught it in time. I also learned you used to work for Whitfield Family Foods. His grip tightened around the phone. I did. Why didn't you tell me? You were eating breakfast. That's not an answer. It's the one I have. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. I'd like to hear what happened to you. With my lawyer present. Why? Because I don't believe the version I was given. Mark's wet fingers with a rag he kept for exactly this purpose. He had spent 8 months avoiding the company, avoiding former co-workers, avoiding the building where security had once watched him pack 14 years of his life into a cardboard box. There, he asked. It's Grace Chandler's office, neutral ground. It will be documented properly. He thought about Lily asking, quietly, if they'd have to move again after he lost the last job. He thought about job applications that always asked whether he had ever been terminated for cause, and the way his hand always hesitated over that box. He'll be there, he said. 2 days later, Marcus walked into Grace Chandler's office wearing his cleanest work shirt. Eleanor was already seated at the conference table, Lily's yellow scarf folded neatly beside her hand. This is a fact-finding meeting, Grace said, adjusting a laptop and a small recorder. It is all not a job offer and not a promise of any corrective action. I understand, Marcus said. Grace reviewed his file aloud. 14 years of service, no safety violations, strong performance reviews. 2 promotion, and then on Human the cold or brudged where Succubstorchpractor had quietly installed lower-cost components instead of the ones specified in the original design. You didn't claim the substitutes were automatically unsafe, Grace said. No, Marcus said. My objection was simpler than that. The data didn't prove the system could hold stable temperature under a full operating load. They recommended either using the original specified parts or repeating a full 72-hour test. And Mr. Whitfield's response? He said, I was turning an engineering question to a moral performance. He said the facility had an opening date. And you? I understood the deadline, Marcus said. I also understood my name would be on the final certification. Grace opened a scanned document on the laptop screen. This is the final report that ended up in your personnel file. Marcus read the conclusion twice. That isn't the report I wrote. How is it different? I wrote that the stability data was insufficient. This version says the variation observed was within expected operating conditions. Did you make that change? No. Did you authorize it? No. Eleanor's face had gone very still. What happened after you refused to sign? He asked. I was pulled from the project. I was fired on. Did you appeal? I did. I was told management had acted within its discretion. What did it cost you? Eleanor asked. Marcus looked away for a moment. That's not part of the technical record. It's part of the truth. He told them slowly that he had lost his health insurance, that he had sold his truck to stay current on rent. The language in his termination made other employers in the industry cautious about hiring him. He had moved Lily out of the small house she'd lived in since her mother died into an apartment, half its size. Does Lily know why? Eleanor asked. She knows I change my jobs. That's all she needs to carry. She's 8. I wasn't going to make my daughter the audience for a fight between grown men, Marcus said. Grace stopped the recorder. We need to search Thomas's archived review files. Eleanor's breath caught at her son's name. Why? Before he entered the hospital, Thomas asked legal to preserve records connected to contractors' substitutions and reduced maintenance schedules across several facilities. That review was never completed. The archive surfaced the following morning. Inside were Marcus's original unaltered test results, photographs of the substituted parts, and an email from Bradley Whitfield to the site engineering team. The language needs to reflect business judgment, not technician anxiety. It's the conclusion and keeps us on schedule. There was also a short note dated 3 weeks before Thomas Whitfield's death. Doyle's termination requires independent review. A technical record does not support the personnel conclusion. Eleanor read it twice, her hands trembling slightly around the paper. He finished the benedicted, but he had seen enough to question what the company had done, and he had run out of time to finish asking. A board was scheduled to vote on Bradley's permanent appointment as chief executive that come Monday. They received this before the vote, Eleanor said. Bradley learned about the recovered archive before the weekend. On Saturday morning, he met privately with Diane Pruitt in the diner's back office. Anne had already received written notice that her treatment of Eleanor was under formal review, and fear had made her pliable. Bradley set a folded document on her desk. This gives legal the full context of what happened. Diane read it. The statement claimed Marcus had interfered with an debate. Quote, disrupted and used the incident to manipulate his way into Eleanor's trust. That isn't what happened, Diane said. You told him not to touch the case. He didn't touch it. He influenced your staff to act. The contractor confirmed the unit was failing. Bradley leaned closer. Well, the board will be deciding this week whether your judgment can still be trusted at all. A complete statement might help them all and the pressure and the regret where you were under that morning. It wasn't a direct threat. It didn't need to be. I need time, Diane said. You don't have much, Bradley answered, and left the paper on her desk. On Sunday, Grace reviewed the diner's security footage from that morning, frame by frame. It showed Marcus never once touching the refrigerated case. It showed Diane silencing the alarm herself. It showed Sarah Whitmore performing a temperature check, and staff pulling the food only after the reading confirmed the danger. It also showed Eleanor sitting quietly with Marcus and Lily, long before Frank walked through the door and revealed exactly who she was. When Grace interviewed Diane that afternoon, the manager began by repeating Bradley's version almost word for word. Halfway through, she stopped. He wanted me to make Doyle sound dangerous, she admitted. Did he threaten you directly? Grace asked. Not directly. He said the board would decide whether my judgment could still spill. Diane pushed the full draft across the table. I was wrong about Mrs. Whitfield. I'm not signing another wrong thing just to protect myself. Monday's board meeting began at 9 a.m. sharp. It had originally been scheduled to formalize Bradley Whitfield's appointment as a executive. Instead, Grace opened by requesting a revision to the agenda. Bradley sat at the far end of the long table, controlled and composed. Eleanor sat at the center, and for the first time since her son's funeral, she wore something other than black. Lily's yellow scarf rested around her neck. Grace laid out the evidence in order. Marcus's original test data, the altered report, Bradley's email instructing the language be changed, Thomas's unfinished note, the diner's security footage, and Diane Pruitt's written account of the pressure applied to her that weekend. This is being presented without operational context, Bradley said calmly. The facility opened successfully. The system was adjusted. No product was ever lost and no one was ever injured. A board member named Harold Vance leaned forward. Was the system adjusted before or after Mr. Doyle refused to certify it? Bradley paused half a second too long, after additional testing. Then his original concern was valid. His concern was addressed. After he was removed from the company, Harold said. Bradley's jaw tightened. He wasn't terminated for raising a concern. He was terminated for how he raised it. Harold turned toward Marcus, who had been invited only to answer technical questions, and sat quietly in his cleanest work shirt. Mr. Doyle, was the original system ever proven unsafe? No. Was it proven stable under a full operating load? No. What exactly did you refuse to sign? A statement claiming the data showed stable operation when it didn't. Bradley turned toward him directly. You could have respected the chain of command. I used the appeal process that was available to me. He challenged executive judgment in front of outside non-contractors. I answered a commissioning question in front of the people performing the commissioning, Marcus said. He delayed a $9 million facility. The failing system delayed the facility, Marcus said. I only refused to lie about it. The room went completely silent. Grace displayed the draft statement Bradley had handed Diane. This was drafted after legal reopened Mr. Doyle's file. Mrs. Pruitt misunderstood my request, Bradley said. Did you ask her to state that Mr. Doyle interfered with company equipment? He asked for a complete account of events. Did you review the security footage before making that request? No. Did you suggest her continued employment depended on how the board viewed her judgment? Bradley did not answer. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice quiet but unwavering. You told me Marcus used my grief to attach himself to me. He was protecting you. No, she said. You were protecting the story you'd already decided to believe. Aunt Eleanor, Bradley said, leaning forward, you met a former employee while you were in mourning. You're allowing one breakfast to influence corporate governance. Eleanor touched the yellow scarf at her collar. The breakfast didn't create this evidence, she said, looking toward Thomas's note displayed on the screen. It only made me willing to finally see it. The board moved into executive session. Marcus waited alone in an empty conference room, uncertain whether his record would ever be corrected, uncertain whether the company would offer anything beyond quiet regret. His phone buzzed. A message from Lily. Did the truth win yet? He typed back. They're still deciding. 23 minutes later, Grace walked in. The board has suspended Bradley Whitfield from all executive authority, effective immediately, pending a full independent investigation. Marcus nodded slowly. And the appointment, withdrawn from consideration, and my file, your termination is now listed as disputed, pending final review. Compensation and benefits will be evaluated once the investigation concludes. That's not the same as clearing my name, Marcus said. No, Grace agreed. It's the beginning of it. 6 weeks later, the independent investigation confirmed everything the archive had suggested. Bradley had altered technical reporting, retaliated against Marcus for refusing to falsify a safety document, concealed contractor substitutions from the board for over a year, and pressured a subordinate manager into providing a misleading statement to protect himself. A board terminated him permanently, stripped his succession bonus, and referred the remaining financial irregularities to outside counsel. Marcus's personnel record was formally corrected. Old Fullyfoods exposed Whitfield is deferred in rating that his original objection had been technically valid, and that his dismissal had been retaliatory. A negotiated settlement restored his lost wages, benefits, and retirement contributions in full. Eleanor personally offered him a senior executive position. He declined it. He didn't want gratitude, placing gratitude saying as an he hadn't earned on his own. Instead, he accepted the 30-day independent assessment contract reviewing maintenance systems across 3 regional facilities and presenting his findings to a hiring panel that included no member of the Whitfield family whatsoever. At the end of that process, the company offered him a position that actually matched his experience, regional maintenance integrity supervisor. It didn't make him wealthy. It gave him stable hours, health insurance for Lily, and work that let him sign his own name without compromising what it meant. Diane Pruitt also faced consequences. She received a formal written warning, lost her management duties during a mandatory retraining period, and was required to complete a full review on customer treatment and food safety protocol. Bradley had pressured her, yes, but he had never made her judge, an old woman, by the condition of her coat. That choice had always been hers alone. She cooperated fully with the investigation and apologized without demanding forgiveness in return. In Bradley's final day, he returned his access badge and cleared out the last of his office files. He and Marcus crossed paths once, briefly, in an empty corridor. "I thought you were trying to embarrass me," Bradley said, quieter than Marcus had ever heard him. "I was trying not to sign a false report," Marcus said. "That's all it ever was." Bradley glanced toward the closed boardroom doors he would never sit behind again. The person I treated like an obstacle turned out to be the person protecting this company. "Knowing that doesn't repair it," Marcus said. "No," Bradley admitted. "But what I do next might." Eleanor slowly returned to public life over the following months. Grief never fully left her. She still woke some mornings, reaching for a phone, before remembering her son would never call again. But she began visiting Marcus and Lily regularly. First for dinner, then for Lily's school music recital, then for a Saturday science fair where Lily built a cardboard model of a refrigerated delivery truck and announced proudly to a row of parents that warm milk was, in her exact words, bad business and also gross. Eleanor laughed harder than anyone else in the gymnasium that day. The company restored a community meal program Thomas had once championed years earlier and quietly let lapse. It looked through hardship could request to till bististry, discreetly in front of a crowded room, no photograph of where no employee to turn a stranger's hunger into a company promotion. A small brass bowl was placed near the register at every Amber Kettle location, where customers could contribute privately, and the company matched every dollar donated each month. The first bowl was installed at the original Asheville diner. Several months after that November morning, Marcus, Lily, and Eleanor returned to the Amber Kettle together. The wind outside was sharp, but the sky above the mountains was clear and pale blue. Diane greeted them at the door. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitfield," then to Marcus, "Mr. Doyle." Then glancing at Lily's neck, "I like your scarf." Lily smiled. "It's warm." They sat at booth E14. Marcus ordered 3 full breakfasts, this time blueberry pancakes for Eleanor, eggs and toast for Lily, coffee, and a full skillet for himself. When the food arrived, Lily looked at the portions and grinned. "This is way more than last time. Things are better now," Marcus said. Lily glanced toward the small brass bowl beside the register, where a folded card read, "No one should have to prove they deserve a warm meal." She slid out of the booth and came back carrying an empty bowl of her own, setting it in the center of their table. "In case somebody needs it," she said. Eleanor touched the yellow scarf still wrapped over her shoulders, the same scarf a little had given her once, when no one in the room had known her name. A few minutes later, an older man walked in alone. His coat was thin, his hands were red from the cold. He stood near the register, studying the prices without sitting down. Lily looked at her father. Marcus looked at Eleanor. Eleanor tilted the empty bunny bowl from the table and waved the stranger toward their booth. If this story reminded you that dignity has nothing to do with what someone is wearing, take a moment to like this video, subscribe more true to life stories, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And remember, the next time someone looks like they have nothing to offer, you may be one kind word away from finding out how wrong that assumption was. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for entertainment and educational purposes only. All characters, names, businesses, and events depicted are entirely fictional and do not represent any real person, living or dead, or any actual establishment. Any resemblance to real persons, organizations, or events is purely coincidental. This content is intended to explore themes of human dignity, workplace ethics, social justice through narrative storytelling. It does not make factual claims about any individual, company, or institution.